Welcome to Southwest Yard and Garden. I'm John White. Today we're going to be talking about fruit trees, and we're going to be identifying some of the wood where the fruit is produced on the tree. And this is going to help you in your pruning practices, because if you're pruning off the wood that's going to produce fruit, then you're losing the potential fruit on that tree, and you may be doing the tree some damage. And also in our pruning practices, we want to be able to regulate the fruit load on the tree. So in some instances, we may want to, especially on fast growing trees, is to take some of that fruit wood off so that we regulate the load on the tree. Okay, on this growth right here, a lot of times what we call a spur, and a spur is a short little stubby twig or shoot growth on the tree that is going to produce the fruit. And a lot of times these spurs are productive from 3 to 5 years on an apple tree, and so we want to keep these little short stubby spurs on the tree, whereas some of the shoots that aren't quite as stubby, this is just going to be a vegetative growth. This is good as far as protecting the bark on the tree, but this is not going to be fruiting wood. So when we go to start pruning on the tree, we want to make sure that we aren't taking off all the little stubby growth, because this is what needs to stay in order to produce a fruiting spur later in the life of the tree. So we want to space the branches out so that we have the permanent scaffold branches, and then we want to go through allowing fruit to be on the tree probably about every 4 to 6 inches up the branch of the tree. And then as these spurs begin to age and mature and lose their productive life, you'll have new ones coming on. So we're going to keep this as a renewal. So on apples, we want to make sure that we leave these spurs on, and again, usually takes about 3 to 5 years to form productive fruiting spurs on apple trees. So apples are known as pome fruits, and we're going to go take a look at a pear, which is also a pome fruit, and we'll look at the fruiting structures on it. Okay, we're looking at a Bartlett pear here, and here's a little spur that is formed on the pear. This is one that'll be productive and produce a fruiting spur. A lot of the other growth on pears, especially as young pears, will be more shoot growth, vegetative growth, and they tend to grow up quite rapidly, and whereas these are much slower and don't seem to put a whole lot of extra growth on. So a lot of times you can identify them that way, but you don't want to cut these off. If you have some real fast growing shoots, you can clip the tip off of them and kind of slow them down a little bit that way, and maybe they'll put on some additional shoot growth that may eventually become spurs. But this is what we're looking for on apples and pears, is the spur, and that what helps identify them as a pome fruit, and that's how you prune those. Okay, the next family of fruit trees we're going to go to is the stone fruits, and these are the members of the Prunus family. So we have peach, apricot, plum, almond, cherry. These all fall in this category, and that's because they make a stone pit. So when you eat the fruit, you'll find that little pit in the inside, so you know you have a stone fruit. Okay, here we're talking about peach, and peach puts on a lot of growth. So peaches, usually we try and remove somewhere about a quarter of the wood or 25% of the wood off the tree each year, because they put so much wood back on. They're a very fast growing tree, so starting out with a young tree, if it's growing healthy, you'll have a full productive tree in just a matter of a couple years, because it's very fast growing. You can see this one, there's some age demarcations there, some little areas where the tissue's kind of scrunched up. That's a 1 year's growth, that's another year's growth, and what's going to produce the wood or the fruiting on the peach is the wood from last year. So we want to keep some of that wood on the tree, so we don't want to go in and remove all this off, but we do want to thin it out, because peaches and stone fruits have a tendency to put a lot more fruit on than what the tree can actually bear. So we'd like to come in and do a lot of thinning off of it, and like I said, about 25%. Okay, I have before me a cherry and an apricot, and both of these stone fruits produce their wood on what looks like a little spur. And so these that are just thick with a lot of buds will have the fruit on them, and so we want to leave a lot of these also, so we don't want to go in and prune everything off of them. If your fruit tree does get a little bit too big, then we want to look at removing some of the wood, but again, leaving as many of the spurs as we can and space them out somewhere about 4 inches apart. Hopefully these tips have helped you in deciding what is fruiting wood and what isn't, and what to leave on the tree and what to take off. So in general rules, we want to do some pruning, shaping on the tree, but we don't want to take the fruiting wood off. And what fruiting wood we leave on it, we want to make sure it's spaced out on the tree so that we don't have heavy production laying out on the outer edges of the tree, and we keep it spaced out throughout the tree. So again, hopefully these tips will make you a more productive and abundant fruit grower.